Well, hello, friends. I'm Mary Frangie. I'm a program specialist at the Trauma Research Foundation, and I welcome you to Inspired Parenting, parenting from an attachment and trauma perspective with Daphna Lender. This is a free 8-part monthly series. Whether you're a parent or interact with children in other capacities, I'm sure you'll find this information encouraging and useful, and find Daphna's hands-on tools a resource you can apply right away. And it's not just about children. This work applies to people from 18 months to 100 years old. Today, we're offering a very special 2-hour session on bullying, empowerment for the victim and healing for the bully. About halfway through today's program, there'll be an opportunity for volunteers to come on screen with Daphna to ask questions. If you'd like to volunteer to be on screen, raise your hand at any time and keep it raised. And please do your best to keep your questions concise and relevant to today's topic. And if you're watching on YouTube, please subscribe. It tells YouTube that this content is valuable and they'll show it to more people. It's now my great pleasure to introduce you to Daphna Lender. Daphna is a child and family therapist with over 25 years of experience. She's a certified trainer, supervisor, and consultant in Theraplay and dyadic developmental psychotherapy, and co-author of the book Theraplay, The Practitioner's Guide. Daphna has successfully treated children and their parents from various backgrounds, including children raised in orphanages, those with fetal alcohol spectrum disorder, those exposed to domestic violence and community violence, and children of parents with chronic mental illness and attachment wounds. Daphna provides training and consultations for psychologists and psychotherapists around the world. Daphna, we're so grateful to have you. Take it away.
Hey, thanks so much, Mary. I really appreciate TRF, and welcome to everybody. I'm grateful to be with you here from wherever you are, whatever time it is. Tonight, we have a bit of a special topic in the sense that it's about bullying and helping the person who's bullied, but also helping the person who is the perceived bullier. And the topic is so, I want to say, loaded because it touches on so many things related to attachment and trauma that we thought it would be wise to extend beyond an hour, because oftentimes there are people who want to ask questions and they don't have time. And then, it's a shame not to be able to address more questions. So that's what we're going to do. And it's going to be up to 2 hours. And if people are going to stick around and there's that many questions, then we will continue up until 2 hours from now. The first thing I want to say is that bullying is a complex and societal problem, and I'm not an expert in schools. I have worked in schools and have certainly seen the need and the effect of when there's effective treatment and training of staff and they deal with it in a good way. And I have some ideas about how to do that, and we'll certainly address the school issue. But I'm not an expert because I'm not a school social worker and haven't done a comprehensive bullying for schools training. And the other thing that I want to give as a caveat is that there are legal issues, and I'm not going to be able to give legal advice. So I would simply will have to refrain from answering those questions. So with that said, let me tell you a story. There once was a girl who was 5 who was in a preschool of a private preschool, and the garden, the backyard and garden of the teacher was made of beautiful hibiscus flowers, bushes. And this little 5-year-old girl had some sort of notion that she wanted to pick the flowers, and she was told she's not allowed to pick the flowers. So she was so angry that she couldn't pick the flowers that she went and picked the flower anyway. And then she targeted another little girl who had some developmental delays and went up to the teacher with the girl in tow and said, "Teacher, this girl picked a flower." And the teacher was mad at the girl with developmental delays and said, "Did you pick the flower?" And she said, and so that little girl who was the victim, she had to serve a timeout and recess. And the bullier did the same thing the next day. She told the victim, "Come here." She picked the flower herself. She took the victim by the hand. She walked her over to the teacher and said, "Teacher, this little girl picked a flower." And the teacher said, "Again? Did you do that?" And the little girl said, so she had to serve another timeout. When the bully did this the third day, the teacher was onto her, and she saw from far what was going on. So she came up to the bully and said, "How could you do this? Why would you do this? You are a bad little girl, and you're going to serve an extra long timeout." And the bully was full of shame, and she stood on the wall and pouted and said to herself, "Nobody understands me." And you know what, friends? The bully was me. I was the 5-year-old. I was the one who felt so alone and so bad about herself and was so full of rage that, having been told that I'm not allowed to pick a flower and wanting something that I couldn't have, I was going to get vengeance on somebody else. And I picked somebody who was weaker than I, who couldn't defend herself as well as I could articulate myself. I did it systematically. So I did it 3 days in a row. And I did it knowingly and purposefully. And I didn't have empathy for her. That's a tough story. And, you know, today I'm almost 53 years old. And when I think about that episode, really my heart breaks. It breaks because it was a missed opportunity. I don't believe that at any point there was a connection between me and the girl who I victimized for me to tell her, "I'm sorry," but also for the teacher to be able to take me aside and give me some sense or some context of both what that would have done to that little girl and also what were my motivations or feelings. Because if she were able to say something along the lines of, maybe you were mad at something and you took it out on her, or maybe you felt lonely, or maybe somebody does that to you at home and mocks you or makes you feel small or humiliates you. And sometimes we do things to other people that are done to us because we're trying so hard to work it out somehow. And it took me years, and I am really fortunate to have been able to go to therapy and be able to work out some of what happened to me when I was little, about the self-hatred and the self-loathing and the rage and the things that I felt. And it clearly made me motivated to be a therapist. And so I look at it from that context now. But I would really, really like for children not to have to wait for 30 years and for the good fortune of being able to pay for a therapist. Yeah. And thank you for the people who are shouting out, because it is really vulnerable. And it still makes me sad, because it was just, a really, as I was saying, I was talking about it. I am sure that people had really big feelings about that, too. Like, wow, who is that? Who is that bully? That bully it's me. Yeah, yeah. And so I want to also, this is from an attachment trauma perspective, and this is made for parents. This workshop, all these workshops are about parents, and it's so, bullying and like attachment trauma are so closely connected from my point of view, and it's such a complex issue. And so I'm going to ask you to do a little reflection on yourselves in a little while. And but first I want to set the stage, okay? Because we want to make our kind of clear what is bullying and what are some of the phenomenon and the risk factors. So let me go ahead and do a little bit of a PowerPoint presentation. I hope it won't take long. It's just want to put us all in the, thank you for that. Oh, thank you. Thanks. Let me go ahead and show you some definitions here. So the three factors that define bullying is an imbalance of power, it could be a physical or verbal mistreatment, and there's exposure repeatedly. And in the digital age, I should add, even one video or tweet or Snapchat message, Instagram, any kind of communication is considered repeated because of the fact that there's multiple viewers and that it's passed on and on. Now, there's different kinds of bullying, which one could be face-to-face, which is actually going ahead and saying it directly to the person, saying something like calling them names, like you're a fag, you're a whore, the things that people say. And I'm going to be using actual explicit words, because this is really, it has to be, we have to talk about this in the most direct way. And my sense is that there's no hiding the ugliness of some of the the name calling. So it could be, these kind of put downs of name calling. It could be physical. And it certainly could be something like something that is not like hitting or shoving, but it could be like snapping somebody's underwear or bra, something like that. Psychological, rolling eyes, dirty looks, mumbling, snickering from afar, that kind of those looks. Could be indirect, so telling people that they shouldn't be friends with that person. There could be something like leaving out or excluding somebody on purpose. Gossiping, which is lowering people's opinion about the victim. Okay. And as I said, it could be, it definitely involves a power imbalance. And the power imbalance could be if the number of people, like 5 against 1, the size of the people, like a taller, stronger person versus somebody who's smaller, status person, like a sophomore versus a freshman. It could also be, as far as power imbalance, it could be the role, like being a counselor at a camp, or certainly being somebody like a babysitter, an older brother. It could be a dominant culture versus a minority culture or ethnicity. So what I want you to do is I'd like you to take a moment, and if you would like to write it down, you certainly can. If you want to make just take a moment to think about from your childhood, or you could actually be facing bullying right now as an adult. Of course, there's such a thing as bullying in the workplace. There's bullying in families, and people might be living that right now, where you feel like you're being bullied, name called, made to feel like you're stupid, being ostracized. That could certainly be happening to adults. But I'm interested in people, if you'd be willing to think about things that happened in your youth. What happened that you think was bullying? Who was involved? Maybe you were a person who was not the one who was being bullied, but you had a role because you were the one who was a bystander. Or maybe you were part of it, but you didn't do the actual victimization. How did you and others react in the situation? How did you feel? And then finally, how would you expect your child to react to that same situation if they were in that same situation? So just going to give you a couple of moments to go back and think of whether it was, in high school or middle school, elementary school, or maybe it was earlier, maybe it was when you were in kindergarten. I want to mention explicitly that it could be that you were the bully, like my story. I'm just giving people a couple of moments so you can go back and put yourself in that place so you can remember and kind of shade in or give color and nuance to where you were in this dynamic, how you felt, and how you would expect your child to react in the same incident. Okay. Okay. So keep that in mind. And we're going to be able to use that and call upon that later when we are able to have a little bit of Q&A. Okay. Now I want to make some distinction because it is possible to have aggressive play and that it isn't bullying. And it's somewhat nuanced, and it especially is nuanced when it's between siblings, because aggressive play is something that people can enjoy even if there are anger and there's tears and there's what is perceived injustices and things that are, they can be much more than rough and tumble play. And the parents might think, is this a bullying situation? Maybe it's between cousins or an older brother and a younger brother or something like that. But the line between that is that there is an element where the person who is in the status of having the upper hand and in more power, maybe with some guidance, maybe with some reprimands, maybe when the brother is crying and in tears and says that, you hurt me or whatever, that the person does go back, the person that has more power and control does take a step back and is able to recalibrate, and that the person who has less power has a feeling of some sense of agency. And so it can be a really fine line, especially within families. So they don't really have to be equal in size, power, or experience, but at least that there is some sort of, maybe there is some sort of, the person who has less power or experience still has some element of having some sense of agency or an upper hand in something. So overall, the question of whether you enjoy the experience or not, sometimes it's really up in the air, because the younger kid or the kid who's less powerful keeps going back for more, but also is like crying and suffering and feels that they're feeling hurt. And so it's sometimes not easy to tell. But the bullying, which is really much more coercive, it can feel very arbitrary, and that the person who's in control is really, just really messing with the person who has less control. And there's really, the power imbalance is really used to the detriment of the person who is the victim. And that the victim kind of feels like they basically have no choice but to participate or be in the demanded experience that the bully is asking of. So it's really a judgment call. Okay. I'm going to stop my screen share and now that I've sort of put us on somewhat of the same page in terms of the definition of bullying, I would like to spend a few minutes, so maybe about 20 more minutes, and I'm going to tell you two examples of cases, omitting names and identifying details, of course, of when bullying occurred and the complexity of the story. And I do want to say I'm looking at it from the point of view relationally and what we can do to help our kids, because sometimes our kids are the bully, sometimes they're the bullier, the one who gets bullied, and sometimes they're both. And unfortunately, I think programs in school that make it really clear cut as to that there's always one person who is the victim and one person is the bully. Research shows that bullies are often bullied themselves, and having a much more nuanced approach is really important, because we just need to humanize the people involved and not make that into black and white. So I want to share with you first a case of a girl who was adopted, and her sense was that she has a different ethnicity than her parents, and she's about 12 years old, and she feels that she's very different than other people. Her sense is that, there's the issue of not being the same ethnicity as her parents. There's the sense that she's adopted and has a different story. When you ask people about, bring in pictures, like the school asks, bring in pictures of when you were a baby. Well, she doesn't have that. She feels different. And so her sensitivity to perceived slights is justifiably really, really sensitive. And she has a sense that people dislike her. She very easily, her feelings are hurt. And she has this kind of push-pull dynamic where she tries to be really nice, but if she feels that, for example, somebody, like, she tries to keep the door open to help her friends, to come in from recess, but if they don't say thank you, then she rolls her eyes and acts angry. And so some of her behavior is confusing to her classmates. This leads to a sense that that her friends, like that the kids in her class, it's as if maybe she thinks they don't like me. And it's like a cycle that keeps happening where she's getting more and more, she got more and more isolated. And that's really, really hard, because if there's one thing that somebody who is being bullied needs, it's a group of friends who can support, or at least one friend who can support them, as well as trusted adults. But the problem of feeling different to begin with, and then having this inability to sort of negotiate those social situations, makes you more and more reticent to be part of a group and to try to make friends. So I'm bringing this all to say that the situation of being a victim of bullying, oftentimes there's already a sense of vulnerability. There's risk factors. Some of those risk factors is, having low self-esteem, being in a minority ethnic or racial group, having things like weight issues, being from the LGBTQ community, having physical disabilities, having developmental differences. Those are some of the factors that contribute. And when a person also maybe doesn't have a strong support base from their family, and they're feeling isolated, they may experience abuse or neglect in their home. They may have socioeconomic stressors, and they may not have opportunities to be part of things that they're really good at. So being good at just one thing is a resiliency factor. But if you don't get a chance to do that because you don't have the funds for after school activities, or there's nobody to drive you, or your community is not safe, you don't have as many resources within to be able to withstand that. So this girl that I'm talking about has coming in with a sense of being vulnerable. So what then happened is a boy in her class suggested that she was fat, that she had a big butt, that she dressed funny because she dressed like a boy, and she was able to tell her parents about it, which was really great because she has a trusting relationship with her parents, and she was able to tell her parents about it. The problem is she did not want her parents to go to speak to the school in terms of the staff, the teacher, the principal, the guidance counselor, the social worker. And that often happens, that the student or the child feels like being having somebody advocate for them makes them feel like actually it's going to cause more problems for them. And so the parents, and this is somebody that I worked with, they didn't know if they should have a conversation with the teacher or the principal, despite the child really wishing that the parents didn't approach the adult. So she said she would try to take care of it herself. And this is one of the really, really tricky points that parents and children go through, which is if a child asks the parents not to talk to the staff or not to talk to the parents of the other student, what are the parents supposed to do? And we spent a couple of sessions talking about this. And here's the points that we talked about. It's really, really important as much as possible to try to get the child's consent, no matter how old they are. It's important to try to get the child's consent to agree to talk with the adults who are in charge in that context. So in this context, this would have happened either in the classroom, at recess, or in the hallway. So all of these things happen at school. And there's one consensus about bullying is that it is really the adults who are in charge, who do need to take responsibility for addressing the situation. And so it would make sense that the school, the principal, the guidance counselor, and so on, or the teacher would be addressed and be involved. And the coming up with a plan and having the child be on board with how it's the parents or whether the child wants to address it herself and be able to talk to the teacher herself with the parent's help in a meeting or something like that is really, really important. Because if you sort of railroad over what the child's and don't respect or at least hear out what the child is feeling and what their perspective is and what their concern is about getting this addressed, what we've done is we've disempowered that child and given them even less of a sense that they have a sense of agency. Now, ultimately, the parents will have to decide whether they will go ahead and talk with the school, even if their child is adamantly opposed to them talking. I think that there is a decision that a parent would need to make about that. If it depends on how serious it was, it depends how chronic it was, it depends on how vehement the child is feeling about the parents not talking to the school staff, and a lot of different factors. But I think one of the most important things that we as parents need to do is you first need to just rein in the instinct to take action based on your indignancy and your rage and your sort of, mama bear, papa bear reaction. That has to come, you can rage later to your friends or to your spouse or to your therapist. But when a child tells you about that, if you have that urge to be like, oh my God, I can't believe this happened, and getting too emotional, like, I'm going to take action. We're going to talk to the school right away. I'm going to call the parent, the parent of this student. Nobody's going to treat my child like this. It's taking the information of what the child experiences, and you're taking that away from the child, and that's not empathy. It is it's as if the experience has injured you, and you're reacting from the hurt person inside of you, the hurt child inside of you, and it's totally normal, 100% normal. But to be able to take that time and not react right away so that you can have a conversation with your child. And I'm going to talk about what I suggest, how you talk to your child when they come to you with this kind of information. So ultimately, the the child that I'm talking about, what did decide, and it took her several weeks to make the decision, and it was really hard for the parents to wait. But she decided to go and speak with the guidance counselor herself, and the guidance counselor then asked if she could bring in the principal, and the girl was able to speak to these adults, and in doing so, she felt that she was able to handle it and use her own voice. And the child who was her, in this case, the bully, and it was a pretty clear-cut case, did have the school handled it in such a way that they spoke to the child and asked him to write a letter of apology, which he did. And the girl, my client, she didn't feel like it was 100%, satisfactory, but she did feel everybody, her parents, myself, the guidance counselor, and the principal, spoke to her about how courageous she was and how much they admired her and how she's a leader and how she is able to help advocate for other students who she might see in the future, who might be vulnerable and who might be bullied. And I think that was a really, really, a really great way for us, the adults in her world, to show her that she has strength and a sense of agency. So I'm gonna stop now. I'm going to tell you about I'd like to suggest that whether your child is a victim or whether your child is the bully, before you jump to problem solving and before you tell them how you feel and what you think that they should do, I'd like to offer you a sort of step-by-step process, especially if you're getting really worked up and angry, to remember the guidelines of ACE. It's an acronym, and it's accepting, curious, and empathic. So it spells ACE: accepting, curious, and empathic. So if your child says something like, let's say I got in trouble at school today because I was caught teasing and spreading rumors, and the principal talked to me, and they're going to talk to you, mom, or something like that. Accepting is the idea of, first of all, saying, thank you so much for telling me. I'm really grateful to know what's going on with you. And it's really important for me to be able to know what's on your mind. Okay, so you could also say something like, that was courageous of you to be able to come to me, and I'm really grateful for your openness. So just really, really basic acceptance is really helpful, because the child will have come with the worst fear in their mind that you are going to be super angry, disappointed, you're going to punish them, you're going to, ground them or yell at them or hit them. And so you need to practice being accepting, because it doesn't come naturally when you hear, that your child is bullied somebody. Empathic is the next thing I would do. So I know I said ACE is accepting, curious, and empathic, but I think usually the sequence goes more accepting, empathic, and curious. But sadly, that doesn't spell anything. I wish it did, because then it would be good. It would be good if the sequence was AEC. It doesn't spell anything. Yeah. Empathic. How would one be able to respond with empathy to a kid? Probably say something along the lines of, wow, you're in a really, really tough position. You're in a really, really hard position. And I can imagine that you're feeling pretty stressed out and pretty stuck right now. And then a curiosity question like, hey, can you tell me more about what was going on at that time when you decided to do this? Or what's going on for you right now? What are you most worried about? Of course, parents want to say, and basically interrogate the child and say, okay, who did you do this to? When did you do it? How many times did you do it? What are you going to do to make it better? How did the principal say you were going to be punished? And then, lecturing the child and saying something like, do you know that you could be suspended? I can't have you acting this way. That kind of, lectures and threats. And it's so natural to have to feel like you want to do that. If you can at any point say, hold on a second, if you find yourself, really going off the deep end and starting down on lectures and threats, if you can just say, just hold on, I need to take 5 minutes and I'll come back. And remember ACE. Remember what you wish your family would have been able to do for you that they weren't able to do for you, and try to remember that. That's what I really want you to recall. What would you have wanted? What would you have wanted your parents to react if you were the one who had who was a bully? The same thing goes to if a kid says, I'm being bullied. As I said, people want to say, oh my God, that's terrible. I am going to call the school. I'm going to call that kid's parent. I'm going to go to that kid's house and I'm going to give him a piece of my mind, and the child is already feeling humiliated and powerless. So to be able to say, hey, again, thank you so much for telling me. That is amazing that you were so courageous to be able to tell me. And then, because that's accepting. And then you say, that must have been such a hard and lonely experience for you. You must have also been scared. You must still be scared. Something like that, empathic and curiosity. Tell me more about it. Tell me more about what happened, or how do you think that we could work together to make this situation better for you? Okay, so that's why it's especially helpful. This is exactly like, when emergency workers come to a scene of somebody who is injured, they have a protocol. Okay, the protocol is based on a triage of stopping the bleeding, all the things that you have to do, immobilizing the person, giving CPR, the kind of first aid that you give is because there's a reason for that, because you cannot afford to go off on all sorts of tangents of what if this and what if that, and should I do this and you have to have a protocol. Well, when your child comes to you with something really stressful, like I'm being bullied, I'm being victimized, or I am the bully, you need that you need that first aid, and you need to have the actual set of rules and protocols. And that's why I really like remembering that, because this acronym helps you to just focus on being in this place of acceptance, empathy, and curiosity. And then if you need to, you can take time to yourself and say, I need to take a break and I need to come back, but not jumping right away to, all sorts of gut reactions. It's going to really, really encourage your child to be able to keep coming to you. And that's what we want. A child who feels that they are able to come to their grown-up and tell them what's going on is one of the biggest resiliency signs. It's the number one resiliency sign. Now, ultimately, again, a parent may need to take some sort of action to protect their child, even if their child doesn't want them to. If the parent, finds out that their child is the one who's bullying, having the attitude of acceptance and empathy and curiosity does not mean that you don't give a consequence. Everybody thinks that, not everybody, but many people think that the bullier should be kind of punished. And the research goes more towards, being expelled is not effective. It serves to harden and isolate and make the bully, who was likely also being bullied at home or in the community themselves, feel more alienated. And so the first response is to gather information, just information gathering from the adult who's in charge. So if there's any students who are bystanders, and just getting information, then the important thing is to be able to have a conversation with the person who is the bullier, who is the perceived bullier, to give them a sense that somebody is interested in seeing them as a human being and keeping the connection, and not coming strictly from the point of view of being of disciplinarian and being told off. And yes, there is a point at which the adults have to decide that an injustice was done and that this is bullying behavior. And the best idea is to go with the idea of restitution, which, if somebody is a bully and they are, having bullying behaviors, one of the important things is that they should explicitly be given the opportunity and strongly encouraged to go to therapy. Now, I know that's easier said than done, because in many, many communities, there are not therapists available and people can't afford therapists. And I readily admit that this is a huge societal problem. And there's some online programs, there's some free resources and podcasts and things that people can listen to that aren't therapy. But I really do want the person who is the bully to have an opportunity to be able to explore the reasons why they acted in that way. And typically, it's really a family issue, as I said. The other thing for restitution, it's being able to do something to contribute to the community. first of all, the person who they directly harmed, if they can do something positive for that person, and it doesn't necessarily mean coming and having a face-to-face apology. It could be a note. It could be giving either your money or your time to a charity that the person cares about. It could, but I think it's one of the nicest thing is to have that student have to volunteer in a younger classroom and have them have a role as a carer and like help, if they're a fifth grader, have them help the kindergarten teacher to clean up her classroom at the end of the day, something like that. That helps the community, the school community, and other maybe acts of restitution for the classroom. So because what we want to avoid is just meting out punishment. So let me end with one thing, and then I'm going to go ahead and do a Q&A. I'm a TheraPlay trainer, and the TheraPlay method is really a attachment-based play, and it's usually between parent and child. But one of the things that there's a wonderful application, which is a school-based application. It's called Group TheraPlay, and the idea of it is that it's circle time, but the activities that they do, like if it's a 20-minute circle time every day, the activities are all based on the students taking care of each other and on social connection and cooperation. And one of my favorite activities is called Taking Care of Hurts. So let me paint you a picture. Imagine 25 7-year-olds sitting in a circle, and the teacher and her helper are in the middle of the circle. And the teacher starts with one student and says, Tommy, do you have a hurt today? And if the student has maybe they have a bruise or a scratch, or they have any kind of owie, and even if it's an old bruise or scratch, if Tommy says, yeah, I have an owie right here, okay, the teacher takes either a little dab of lotion or a cotton ball and says, oh, Tommy, I hope that your owie feels better. That's all she does. It takes 2 seconds. And then everybody in the group says, hip, hip, hooray. Teacher took care of Tommy today. Then we move on from Tommy, turns to the person on his left. And he's instructed, this is done every day. So it's every time they do circle time. So it makes it into a pretty well-oiled routine, machine. Tommy turns to Caden and says, Caden, do you have a hurt today? And Caden says, I have one right here. So Tommy is given either a dab of lotion or a cotton ball from the teacher, and he just rubs it right here. And then the group says, hip, hip, hooray, Tommy took care of Caden today. And then it passed on to Caden. Caden turns to the person on his left, and he asks Eileen, Eileen, do you have a hurt today? And she says, yeah, I have one on my knee. And so he takes care of it, and we say, hip, hip, hooray. Caden took care of Eileen today. So who's getting the recognition? The person who's the carer. Now, that's a practice. It's a practice like meditation is a practice. Okay? You have to do it with kids when they're perfectly calm and they're just doing it like, circle time. Then we have on the teacher's desk either a bowl, like a jar of cotton balls, or a pump of lotion, if that's what they choose, depends on what the teacher prefers, lotion or cotton ball. And the students are allowed to approach the teacher's desk whenever they see somebody's hurt and take care of their classmate on demand, just like that. So the kid will run up and say, teacher, Eileen is hurt. I need a cotton ball. And then he goes, takes a cotton ball, and then rubs it on wherever she was hurt. And then that student is praised and encouraged, because we have to encourage the behaviors that we're looking for, that are empathy behaviors. Okay, that's really where it is at in terms of preventing bullying. And one of the most beautiful things, I saw that one of the most gifted teachers that I witnessed, a kid hit another kid, and she pulled him aside and she took some lotion and she said, you know what? He was very opposed. He was not happy about being taken aside. And she said, she took his left hand and said, if you have a hurt to give away, it means you had one in yourself, in your heart. So I'm going to take care of that hurt for you. And the kid was kind of like looking like this. He was not happy. He wasn't like looking in her eyes. And she took a dab of lotion and she put it here on his left hand. And he said, this is where I'm putting it, because here is where your pulse sends all of your blood to your heart. And it's where you had a hurt in your heart that you had to give away. And the kid just took it, and he just took it in. And then she said, okay. And he kind of like relaxed. And she said, are you ready to go and take care of whoever he hit? And he just kind of like went like this. And she led him by the hand. She took his hand. She put a little lotion. She had him put it on the person's hand and said, there, you're making it better. That's better. And then she just like squeezed both of their hands together, and then they went off on their way. And the person who was hurt too seemed to like bounce back. And it was just one of the most beautiful things I've ever seen. And I thought to myself, if every first grade classroom had this, what a one more wonderful, peaceful, caring, empathic world. Because what I saw was the child who was hurt, who had done the hurting, just like restored back to just like a blooming flower. All of a sudden, he was like expiated from his sins, and he was new again. And the victim too was satisfied. And so I'd like you to think about that and remember that, because you can also do that in your families as well. Okay, so it's now time for us to go ahead and have Q&A. The way we do this is, if you raise your hand, you'll be able to be promoted to presenter, or whatever the title is, and then you'll be able to turn your camera on. I saw some questions and I realized that they kind of flew by me. So if you did have a question, this was your opportunity.
Hi, Daphna. My son was adopted from China at age 7. He has a history of complex trauma and is now 16 in 9th grade. And there have been several episodes of bullying this year. And he's having a lot of emotional flooding, not feeling like justice is being done and that adults aren't safe. That was kind of his experience early on. And he recently decided to throw an apple core in response to some of the bullying. He was thinking about putting his hands on the bully, but opted for the other and had a detention because of that. And he just felt like there was so much injustice that the bully wasn't, quote unquote, punished. It's just really hard to know how to handle. He has a lot of thoughts about revenge, both for the caretakers in China and the bullies right now. And we had been doing counseling. We've done some medication. We're just really seeing him kind of shutting down at times. Like, he'll get through the school day and it's just a lot. So, I'm thinking about the ACE. I'm thinking about a lot of what you said, but it's really hard to know how to support him in that.
I either I cut out or you cut out for a moment. I'm sorry about that. But I think I got the gist of your question. So first of all, you said he was adopted at age 7, right? Okay. Wow. So he would have gone through a lot of victimization before, in his whole life. And so, why am I saying that? Because you said he has revenge fantasies.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So a lot of times people are very, very frightened by the children's talk of revenge and revenge fantasies. I don't know if he says it or if he draws it or if he describes it to you. I don't know, when he's going to sleep or when he's having nightmares and he wakes up in the morning. I'm not sure what. Are those revenge fantasies frightening to you? Are you alarmed by them?
I think when they were more directed towards the caregivers in China, they were alarming, but we weren't there. Sending him into school, I'm just not sure how far he's going to get pushed. He knows the right things to do. He doesn't want to do that, but I think he just feels threatened, unsafe. He's in fight or flight, a lot of the time. And, I just don't know how far he's going to get pushed. So I've been in communication and the school's been pretty supportive. It's just the thing he's talked about most recently is just the injustice and just feeling like it doesn't really help for him. The therapist we were working with too feels like the onus is on him to go to them. So we're talking about having somebody check in with him more regularly rather than making him go to an adult. So
I really, really support that idea that he has a safe person who's in charge of going and checking with him about what is on his mind in terms of safety in these, and this could be ideally a twice a week conversation. And we'd love it if it was every day, but it's just unrealistic for a staff person unless it's an exceptional school or there's an aide or something like that. So you're, I really, really like that idea of checking in with him, and that he can also, it's really important for children to be able to leave the classroom if they're feeling, I guess you said that you're worried that he's like making it through, but then he really shuts down at home.
Yeah, I think a lot of it's happening during like less structured times, like lunchtime.
For sure.
A couple of them happened, and like he's just told to kind of keep distance, keep away from the student, but he's like, I can't just always walk away.
No, walking away is a really crummy, recommendation, because it still, it doesn't deter the student who's the bully. And the, practicing like comeback lines, like little quips and things to role playing, that kind of stuff. It still feels like it's that person, like it's the victim's responsibility to have like clever little quips to respond to a person, He
kind of feels like he's almost like like this. There's been a couple occurrences of different people, and he feels like he's becoming a target that he has to kind of prove that people shouldn't mess with him. Like in his mind, he's like, I got to show them not to mess with me. But he's also aware. He's like, I know I could get in a lot of trouble. I could get kicked out of school, but he's trying to figure all of that out.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. I am, when a person says, I have to check, I have to make sure that, people don't mess with me, I have to prove that. I think that that's actually a good impulse to go on, because he's actually trying to like test his boundaries, and throwing an apple core to me sounds awesome. I don't know, if he felt good for him, but because maybe, I do think that being able to try out a bunch of different ways of being assertive, they are not pretty, you know what I mean? So throwing an apple core is a way of trying to, be assertive. It can get really, really messy. I really want to support that he doesn't have to repress his anger. So his revenge fantasies, I tend more to think along the lines of thinking like, if he's sharing them at all in any way, like talking or drawing, that you not enjoy and like, oh, I love it, and I'm going to join in with you and say, yeah, let's decapitate them. Like, no, I don't mean that. I mean, to be open, to be curious, to listen, to say, I like, your thought process. Like, I can see where you're going, you're going from, I don't know what the kind of images that he uses. And I'm not supporting violence. And I just want to make sure everybody's clear on that. But you have to be able to validate the person's anger. And you can't, the way you validate a person's anger, you can't just say, you have a right to be angry, but you can't have revenge fantasies and say that you want to cut people's heads off, because you're going to end up in jail or in the principal's office. And also you have to respect people's boundaries and not throw apple cores or, not spit at people or things like that. It's like, I don't want you to spit, but if you do, I certainly can understand why. What I was going to say about school is that it is really important that a person who's feeling overwhelmed at school be able to have some breaks and some timeouts, and that they have that in their support plan, no questions asked. And when they come home, they are going to shut down.
Yeah.
They cannot do anything but shut down. But the extent to which a person can find something to do physically with their body is really, really helpful. You've probably been told about that already, whether it's karate or swimming.
He does taekwondo, and he has a belt test today. So I'm hoping that helps turn the corner. But yeah, I mean, words like, I want to train to be an assassin get thrown around. So that's the thing that.
Okay. Wait a second. But he said he wants to train to be an assassin. And I suppose that somewhere in the CIA, there's a role for that.
Yeah, I suppose.
What I'm saying should not be interpreted that I'm encouraging him to go get a gun, or for violence, that I'm encouraging violence. I am saying that you can't have it both ways, where the person who was victimized does have rageful feelings inside. And if he has a connection to his parents or friend, or a trusted adult or something like yourself, which it sounds like he does, because he's sharing this with you, that tells me that it isn't going to be where he's going to go, get a gun or do violence himself. But we really need to understand that a person who was victimized is rageful, and you can't try to, channel their rage only into using nice words, because that does not work. It just makes a person feel suppressed. So to honor his rage and hopefully that he will be able to channel it, and that you're going to, you trust him, is that connection.
Okay. Well, thank you.
Yeah. Thanks so much for that. Okay. Hi, Marissa.
Hello. So I have a 4-year-old nephew who has had kind of a history of being aggressive and defiant. And he just recently on Valentine's Day, my mom passed away, his Mimi. And he's been saying that he's been missing her and that's why he's started acting the way that he has. He's gotten increasingly more aggressive and more defiant, especially at school. And he seems to talk a lot older than he is. And he will say things like, if he's punished, he'll say, like, is that all you've got? He'll say, he'll bring up his own, he's got a lot of medical diagnoses that he'll bring up. Like, he'll say, like, oh, well, I have X, Y, and Z. You can't do that to me. And I've kind of taken what I've learned from my job, and I will tell my sister-in-law, like, hey, have you talked with the social worker at school? Have you talked to the counselor? Maybe they can give you some other resources. I've told them about grief counseling for him. And I'm just kind of wondering how else can my brother and his fiance kind of address these behaviors, and how else can they support my nephew while also kind of addressing the really kind of scary behaviors that he's showing. And again, he's 4, so it's kind of like, you kind of feel like the way he's acting isn't necessarily something that you think like a 4-year-old would be acting. So it's kind of difficult to kind of address him, because you want to address him in the way that he's acting. He's acting a lot older, but you also have to remember he's 4.
Absolutely. Yeah. It is unbelievably confusing when a child presents as older than their chronologic age for whatever reason, whether it's their size or the, like extreme words that they're saying, like that he has some sort of capacity to present as like more of a, like a taunting, like a tough guy or something that, really, really provocative. So I would just first, my curiosity is always like, what is going on in behind the scenes in the family, or what has been exposed to, or is it organic, or is it some kind of combination? Kids with ADHD are oftentimes use really, really intense, graphic, and extreme language to express that they're actually feeling distressed or maybe shamed or humiliated, or feeling like lack of control. It's really interesting that he told you. Who did he tell that he's missing his grandma, and that's his Mimi, and that's why?
He's kind of mentioned it to everyone, but especially with his parents. I think he's just really been saying that. And I'm not in the home, so I don't know if he's necessarily saying it in response to them telling him that he can't act out a certain way, or if he's just saying it like out of the blue, because it does seem like sometimes he might, the way that I've heard him react to things, sometimes I can see him saying like, well, if he's being punished, he's like, well, I miss my Mimi, and that's why I'm acting like this. So I can see him reacting like that, but I also don't know if it's just kind of like he's just letting his parents know, like, well, I miss Mimi. I wish that I could do this with Mimi. And it's not necessarily something that he's giving like an excuse for.
Right. It's never an excuse. It's just, he has to have the extreme behavior to be able to like express that he's sad on the inside. And I would look at his really like intense or extreme, reactions, and his like bravado or whatever his attitude is look at it more as like physiologic dysregulation than having like either doing it on purpose to be manipulative or to get his way or something like that. It's really frightening to have so much like intensity in your body. And it's better to respond, when a kid is really audacious with you, especially a 4-year-old little one, you want to be like, oh no, you didn't. And like, you want to one up them, and like grab them and control them or like put them in timeout. But it's better to respond to any kind, especially when he says something like, is that all you got? Is to try to say, say more things like, I got you, you're not in trouble. We're going to get through this soon. And it's going to be over soon and we'll get through this. You're not a bad boy. So respond to it more from the point of view of him feeling panicked, and that rather than feeling that he's being just really, brazenly disrespectful.
Mm-hmm.
And try to go do a calming activity whenever, like as soon as you can, by like taking him away from any audience. Like if there's anybody who's watching and he's like acting this way, try to get him into another room where there isn't anybody and try to like get him a drink, like a cold drink, and read him a story. And just, it's more a physiologic response. Any kind of touch can really soften a child like this. So like doing, I showed you in a previous session, like the weather report, because it has the prosodic voice and so on, is much better because it probably is just kind of like almost like a mismatch in his development, because he has some sort of capacity to act like a tough guy. And that's like, it's really a bad cycle to reinforce and to respond to him in that way. So I would just not respond to those with as if he's like he's literally threatening or oppositional.
Yeah. Okay. That makes a lot of sense. Thank you so much.
Okay. You're so welcome.
So we have a couple questions come in from the chat. Shava asks, what does a parent do when the 11-year-old has seen the principal and teachers not handle previous bullying incidents with others very appropriately and is concerned that she herself will be further made fun of?
Mm-hmm. Okay. If the 11-year-old has seen that the school staff hasn't responded appropriately, and what was the second part of the question?
She witnesses that the principal and teachers don't handle bullying appropriately, and she's concerned for herself that she'll be made fun of if she says something.
I see. So she's not the victim of bullying. She is a bystander.
It seems that way.
I see.
Actually, the person who asked the question had raised their hand. The hand is down now. It's okay. So go ahead. You can go ahead.
Okay. Okay. It's a little bit hard to answer that question without being able to ask a few follow-up questions. So would that person be willing to have a conversation with me, or?
Shava's coming on.
Oh, okay.
Hi.
Oh, hello.
Wow, very poignant, very humbling, very nurturing. Dealing with real issues, and the way you're entraining us to be accepting is incredible. Thank you. So, really,
My honor.
thank you, Mary, for what you do to get this all happening. It's awesome. So this 11-year-old has been severely bullied, so to speak. The scenario was that she befriended a special needs girl, and the friends that are cliques, a clique together in class, decided to befriend this special needs girl.
Okay.
And the 11-year-old girl in question, we'll call her Mary, let's say. Mary doesn't know that this clique of girls is setting up the special needs girl to call her on the phone and schmooze with her, talk and be friends. And Mary is taking it sincere to befriend this special needs girl and talk with her and really develop a friendship. And after a few weeks, whatever, these girls decide to record the telephone conversation that Mary has over time with the special needs girl. But Mary doesn't know it. And what they do is they actually write out everything that was discussed on the phone in a book. And when it's Mary's birthday, these girls actually present this birthday package present to Mary and say, here, happy birthday, like real ouch. And of course, the shock of her privacy being exposed, the shock of here she thought she's doing a kindness by befriending the special needs girl. And it comes that the special needs girl wants to be friends with the clique in class. And the whole thing turns around on Mary.
Wow.
Some sensitivity. She may have a little bit of, I don't know, a vulnerability to her as well, but she's definitely in mainstream. But yeah. And when the mother called me for advice, one of the things I focused on too was to realize that this does need to be addressed at school with the principal and the teachers. But firstly, commend that Mary's talking to you, that she opened up and spoke to you. And apparently this was going on 3 months before. So it took courage for her to even speak to her mother. She was actually speaking to an aunt who actually told her to tell her mother.
Oh, good.
So the mother actually, I referred her out to somebody who specializes in this, but I don't know exactly how that transpired. But I did focus on the fact that we have to build Mary's sense of self-worth and confidence and to appreciate what she's going through. But at the same time, I felt that the teachers and the principal have to be on board, but it has to be handled very discreetly. Meanwhile, Mary's mother said that her daughter, Mary, has seen how they handled other bullying dynamics, and there's no way she wants the teacher or the principal to be involved because it hurts the victim.
What a story. Yeah, I mean, this is unbelievably so many layers of things where adults, I mean, the parents, if this was going on for so long and, you know, nobody knew about it, and then they presented a book. I mean, this is so planned out. And I mean, there's also a, okay, I don't want to go too far because there's, you know, what comes to mind is that there's also a legal aspect to it because they recorded her without her knowledge. But if she feels that she can't have, you know, just there's real, okay, I am getting worked up myself.
So I saw that, and you're so humble, you're so generous to us. You really are an example because that initial impulse,
exactly, yeah.
And I also was worked up with the mother on the phone, how horrific this was. And then when I heard how you said to just not rob them of their experience.
Right. It's really important.
But keep it in them. And then you're creating a sense of acceptance. So you're helping me reframe, and I want to reframe it for the mother too. Even though I didn't have the longevity of dealing with it, I don't know where it's holding right now. I do want to get back to her and, you know, convey and be an example of what you're teaching us today.
Yeah. I mean, you know, if the school does not take this seriously, then the school has a really a systemic problem that goes like way beyond, you know, this incident. I would yes, you would have to commend Mary for her goodness and her desire to be a part of, of helping a student with special needs, and that she told her mom, and but the overwhelming kind of nature of this would require the school to be able to, do some investigation, figure out who all the people are, have conversations with them, have conversations with those students' parents. And if this person, if, Mary doesn't feel that that's been done, I literally don't know how she'd be able to continue going to school. I mean, I wouldn't blame her at all if she didn't want to go to school, because that is such a violation of a person's respect. And so I really, really would hope that the school, I don't know if there's a community of parents that could be spoken to kind of band together. Yeah, what I'm saying is one of the most important things is to be able to validate Mary's experience, that something really bad, happened to her, and that she must be really, really upset and has all the regular normal feelings of being humiliated. And now she doesn't have friends. So I'm hoping that she has other friends, even one more friend, additional friend. I guess she probably doesn't want her mom to talk to the other parents, the parents of the other children.
So what happened is, after just trying to build Mary to the mother, and because the mother had shame that that Mary didn't speak to her for so many months, and that this was going on. So first I tried to build up the mother, that it's so nice.
Oh, good for you.
Wow, this is amazing. And there's no shame or blame here, because if you could have done it differently, you would have. And we all of us don't have manuals when it just happens, these things. And it's great that you reached out. And then I spoke about soliciting, maybe speaking to a parent, if you know the parents of these girls, to just wonder what happened. Don't say what happened, just wonder, because he doesn't want to trip up the dynamic with the friends, the clique. She's afraid that because it was so horrific, that parents should really be punishing the bullies who did it.
Yeah, I mean, this is a really important opportunity, because when, it sounds like a mob is, you wonder what happened in each person's home there, and why they were able to, get to this point where they collaborated in such a deliberate way to produce a book and recording and things like that. But there's something systemically, very wrong. So I would imagine that it would be some sort of punishment of, and I don't mean punishment, like, I think that an apology and some restitution work, but that if they all come from the same school, I would be very worried about that school. So especially because Mary feels that she does not have confidence in the way the school handled other bullying situations. So it just seems like a really huge systemic issue. But I'm so grateful for you, Chava, that you were here to work with this family, even, the guidance that you did give. So thank you for that.
Thank you. Could I, see somebody else is there, but I have one question, and I wonder if others, when we reflect on what bullying is and the way you explain bullying, and we see our children or a child that does have a little bit of ADHD, or there could be a misperception of how they viewed things, but ultimately they're experiencing themselves as being bullied because there's some lack of commonality going on as how things are being perceived. Does it make any sense to try to update the child, even though they're a teenager now, and maybe they've chosen to be more, how should I say it, they're alienating a parent. So they're not in communication with the parent. Let's say a parent somehow sees another angle of what the child went through, and maybe sibling was being bullying to sibling, but they didn't have a voice as a child, and they didn't have the facility of expressing that. It was just sibling rivalry, let's say, chalked up to another parent seeing it. But in actuality, there was imbalance of power. So
I think I am going to have to sort of cut it short because I want to give other people opportunities. And it sounds like a pretty complex situation, but I would definitely talk to that person, even though, that child, even though they're now an adult, to kind of give them that perspective, because I think it always helps. So thank you, Chava, so much.
thank you. God bless. Thank you. Really.
Thank you. Hello, Allison.
Hi there. I'm looking for some advice around speaking with my nephew, who's 5 years old. My partner and I are currently fostering him, so he's had a lot of trauma. And he's altogether doing really well in school, but he's been having some challenges with a couple of girls in his class. And it initially was described to me as him wanting to play with them, but how he was approaching play was off-putting. And so they were saying no a lot of the time. But it's kind of evolved into this situation now where he's making nasty faces at them. And he's told us a couple of times outside of the school that he's decided that it's his job to get one of these girls to move to another school. And so when I feel like I could be doing a better job of accepting, because I think I initially just jumped to like, whoa. We cannot be talking about that. Like, that's not going to happen. But anytime that we try to give him some feedback about how that might feel to the girls, he's like completely shuts down and is like, nope, I'm not listening to you. No. Like he's not, we're struggling to try to teach him this lesson of why he might be challenged and how his actions are making it worse, when I think that he really just does want to be friends with these girls.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I have a feeling that, being that you're fostering him, that he's developmentally younger because of what he went through, maybe before he was with you. And he's really experimenting with feeling rejected, and he's trying his powers to, show them that he's displeased and that he's angry by having, mean looks. And then he's expressing in a very, very, developmentally young way, his desire that they disappear, and he's going to make them disappear. And I really, really wouldn't be too cross with him or stern with him, and clarify for him, you can't do that, because you just go more with the acceptance and empathy. And the empathy is, you really wish that you could make it better for yourself and not have them be there anymore. And it's really sad when people don't want to play with you. So the anger is on top, but underneath it's the sadness and rejection. And just say, I really get it. Mm-hmm. I wouldn't go too much to the point of thinking this is really an issue of he's going to become, a conduct disorder kid or something like that. And if he doesn't want to talk, the idea that you could do is have him hide under the cover while you and not look, but or only peek out while you talk to him about certain things, and tell him you can also close your ears and only half listen to me. If you want to do, but keep it super short, what you want to tell him. Mm-hmm. And there's a lot of books about bullying, children's books, and that's a really good way. Mm-hmm. So I would look those up. Thanks, friends. I'm actually aware that there's a lot of sound behind me, and that's because I'm at a family party, and there's very little I can do to control the family. So anybody who's hearing loud screaming, that's me on my side.
We hope everyone's having a good time. So I have a question from Carol. Carol asks, how do you deal with a child that refuses restitution? I try to make it low key so it's not forced, but I'm not taken seriously. How do I lovingly teach her how important restitution is? I realize this is something I'm doing incorrectly and would love to get it right.
Okay, well, that's a really good question. And there you do have there's a place at which, you as a parent do get to exert a boundary or limit or consequence and I like to sequence it, like if when you're able to write that letter of apology, or when you're able to help do that chore for your sister who you hurt or something like that, then we can go to the park, or then I can drive you to your friend's house, or whatever it is that they need. But it's because the nice thing about parenting is that your child always needs you for something, and you can use that as leverage. And I'm sorry, I don't want to make it into a power struggle or any kind of sense of coercion, but it is quite important that once you give them a choice of restitution, like between three things that they could do that to make it up to the person or to contribute to the community. And they don't have to choose right away, and they don't have to do it right away. But once you agree on it and a time frame for it, then there is a need to keep that contract. It's a social contract. And so your part of the social contract is that you're not going to just cooperate with ignoring it. And so if you have to say, we have to get that done, or you have to do that, nice thing to make it up to that person, then that's what you have to do before we can do something else that you want to do.
Thanks, Daphne. That makes sense.
Oh, sure. Hi, Kaylee. Thanks.
Hi, Daphne. Hi, Mary. Thank you very much. So I'm Kaylee, and just an average mom to a 5-year-old daughter. But thank you very much for these webinars. They're extremely, extremely helpful. So I just have a quick question. So like I said in the chat, what words can I use for my 5-year-old daughter who's in kindergarten to encourage her to not be afraid to stand up for herself and to be independent of herself in school when she's around friends who are displaying bullying behavior, both to her or her friends? Basically, I just want her to not be a follower and do the right thing.
Did you say you want her to not be a follower?
Yeah, like I want her to feel confident to have her own independence and be able to stand up and say, hey, that's not right. Or no, that's not what we should do, or tell an adult.
Got it. And can you give me one specific example of what she saw or experienced?
So just on the playground this week, one of her very close friends, who's a girl at her age, was picking on, I guess, one of their group friends, and kept bugging her. And I noticed when I picked her up from school that she was kind of following suit. I want to correct that behavior as early as possible. Yeah.
I see. Okay, so she was following suit. I see. Well, one thing you could just say what you saw. So you could say, hey, guess what? I noticed today when so-and-so was doing X, Y, and Z to so-and-so. And I wondered, I saw that you were looking and kind of playing along with it, with, whatever the bully's name is. And I'm wondering, what do you feel about whoever the bully, do you really like her? Do you really want to be her friend and really want to be like her and with her? That makes a lot of sense. I'm just guessing that she's kind of swept into it because she really is, that person is I don't know, a leader or is charismatic or something like that.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. And then say, and what do you think your other friend who was who was being like picked on, or who was being, told what to do, like that she didn't want to do? Do you have any idea how she felt? Just to develop like what we call just mind sight, which is being able to see the other person's point of view.
Right.
And then maybe just ask them curiosity questions like, did you feel good about how your friend treated the other friend?
Sure.
And then just say something along the lines of, what I would do if I were in that situation, I might stop following, X, like the bully, and kind of say, hey, that's not nice. Leave her alone. And then and then just ask her, like, what do you think about that? And she might be like, I don't know. And you'd be like, okay, thanks. It's okay not to know. And then just leave it at that. All of that is modeling behavior of like creating like what we call like self-reflection skills. But her finally getting to the point where she says to her friend, the bully, I don't like what you're doing, or stop that, is literally, it has to be a developmental process that like emerges from her. And what we don't want is for you to like be like, hey, next time you tell her blah, blah, blah.
Right.
Because then it makes the person feel pressured that if they didn't do it, they can't tell you about it.
Right.
So it has to be more like evolving.
Okay.
Wait.
I understand.
Yeah.
Okay. Thank you so much, Daphna.
You're welcome. Thanks.
All right, Daphna, we have another question that came in from Jennifer. It's quite long. Let me read this to you.
Okay.
What do you do if the bully is 9 years old, on the autism spectrum, and is usually quite sweet, but seems to do things at school impulsively, has a record of anxiety, is now getting a label that he's a bad boy? The child also has an older brother who is low functioning autistic, and a little sister, and his mother is really aware of things, but can't seem to get into the 9-year-old that these impulsivities can't happen. He recently choked a little girl, but he believes he was tickling her. He also runs away from school too. My daughter is worried he will also become the victim of bullying as he grows as a high functioning person with autism, but very developmentally younger. So it's tricky. The school is trying to help, but they say they can only do so much. He's getting more anxious and feeling he is such a bad boy. He thinks that quite literally. When my daughter talks with him, he feels sorry. Her camera is not working, so she's having difficulty coming on to ask this herself.
Okay, yeah, this is a really complex situation with lots of layers. It's very common for a student who, is impulsive and who has developmental differences, and they're actually also really sweet, to be both the bully and the victim. It's really common. And, having anxiety also, you're very hypersensitive and you're hyper stressed all the time. So you're just going to feel like anytime you do something wrong, it reinforces that you're a bad boy. I'm not sure if the student is, in the right classroom. It seems like he's maybe needs like a higher level of, just like a smaller classroom with more support. Because each time he does something, to like choke, he thinks he's tickling a kid, but he's actually choking her. It can't be seen as a bully behavior. It needs to be where, the teacher comes in and says, look at how how she's feeling. This doesn't feel good to her, and like really help him to notice the signs, and that, and then have him offer some kind of apology. Also, he could need to be have a time or a place where he could calm down with some sensory things and be told, you're not in trouble, you're not a bad boy, those kinds of things, because he's developmentally younger. He needs to be told that all the time. It's really a matter of intervening in the moment each time over and over again if you want to have like a positive outcome. So, but short of that, I'm not sure what else could be done, because it takes a lot of little experiences of like repair of those ruptures and then like, restitution and success for a child to then, start undoing that sense of like, I'm a bad boy, I'm a bad boy, I'm a bad boy. Mm-hmm.
Thanks, Daphna.
Mm-hmm.
If anyone else has a question, we probably have time for one more. Please raise your hand. And if not, are there any final thoughts you want to leave us with today, Daphna?
Well, I think the thing that I really want to leave you with is the connection between the parent and the child is the most important resiliency factor. So, as much to the extent that we can be accepting and empathic in everything that we do with our children, rather than just, when they come to us saying that they were the bully or being bullied, that keeps that line of communication open. And then, the child isn't alone. I think that that's one of the worst feelings, is feeling like there's nobody on your side. And we have to develop lots of different people on the child side, but the caregiver, the primary caregiver, is the most important person. So that's what I would leave us with.
Thank you. That is so helpful.
And it's okay to end early.
Yeah, I think that was great. This was so informative and so helpful. Thank you so much. And thanks to all of our volunteers. We really appreciate your questions and your vulnerability. It really enriches the program. Daphna, your expertise is just so helpful to so many. Join us next time for session 4, where we're going to be talking about how to handle problem behaviors like a sore loser or a child who lies or steals. Details and previous sessions can be found when you log into your TRF account. You can go to My Purchase Content. You'll find more details about this program. Working diligently behind the scenes is Abby Bueno. I'm Mary Frangie. Daphna Lender, thank you so much. Thanks to our audience. Bye for now, everyone. Bye-bye.
Thank you, everybody. Be well.